Jahangir Aziz joins us. Jahangir, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Sure.
So, last 4 years and the coming 4 years would be different. We all know that. What we need to understand, how different.
Look, the difference been more or less telling. You are going to see changes in tariff policy, changes in immigration policy, US tax policy, and deregulation. Now, in our view, the immigration and tariffs would come earlier, and the ones on regulation and on tax policy come later, not because there is any such magic sequencing. It's simply because the first two are easier to do through executive orders, and the latter two are more difficult to do because it requires legislative changes. That's the way we've been thinking. And if you look at today's pronouncements, whether they're through executive orders or in the speeches that President Trump made both during the inauguration, then to his supporters, and then to the press conference while he was signing the executive orders, that more or less seems to be, with some differences here and there, that seems to be the direction of travel. Clearly, today was focused much more on immigration. My sense is that, based on what he has said, the focus will shift a little bit more towards tariffs for the remainder of the week, and we should see more details coming out both on immigration and on tariffs in the days coming.
Jahangir, US will impose tariffs on China, but China
Sure.
will not sit back with finger on their lips.
No,
Do you
no,
expect retaliation? Do you expect trade
of
war? Do you
course,
see that could have
of
impact on the
course.
global growth?
No, of course. 2018-19 is the flip. China retaliated with every tariff that US imposed. China retaliated 1-to-1. We don't know what Canada and Mexico, but both Canada and Mexico, at least, Canada said so directly, Mexico not so directly, but there clearly will be retaliation. I don't think that if 2018-19 was the playbook, no country sat back and simply said the ones on which the tariffs were imposed and did nothing. Of course, there'll be retaliation. The retaliation will be through tariffs and then, of course, through what they do with exchange rates. In 2018-19, China offset 70% of the increase in tariff through dollar CNY depreciation. So I think clearly, if you're going to impose tariffs, US does expect retaliation, and there most likely will be retaliation.
And, Jahangir, one is just trying to scratch our heads and try and deduce what, Trump 2.0 would actually mean for the US dollar. Barring the knee-jerk reaction that we had overnight, are we in the right direction if we assume that dollar may actually peak out, or do you think not quite?
I think it would be a brave person to say the dollar is going to peak. We don't know what the impact of the immigration is going to be on inflation. We do not know the impact of tariffs on immigration and on through retaliation on exports and on imports in the US. We also do not know what impact the trade uncertainty will have on business confidence. In 2018-19, it wasn't the direct effect of tariffs that affected either China or the US. What affected not just China and the US, but the rest of the world was the plummeting of global confidence. Along with that, the plummeting of almost exactly the same time, the plummeting of global, and by global, I mean almost across everywhere, including in Europe, which wasn't part of the tariff war, at least directly, of investments and investment and IP and industrial production, and and all of this just stabilized only when the Fed started to cut rates, which was back in the second half of 2019. We also do not know how business confidence in the US is going to react to deregulation and tax cuts, how the 10-year is going to react to possibly much higher fiscal deficit if the tax cuts are large and are not offset by increased revenues from tariffs. So there's a whole bunch of uncertainties about which we do not know. And to say that either the 10-year has peaked out or the dollar has peaked out will require a much braver person than I.
Jahangir, just to wrap it up with one very simple question for the benefit of our viewers, and I'll, perhaps put a template based on the economics here, that if interest rates, they go higher, US will have to service or the cost of servicing the debt will go higher. And if dollar goes higher, their export strategy in a sense would start faltering. So why would Donald Trump and his regime, boot for a stronger dollar and higher interest rates?
Look, if you're going to search for consistency in these policies, I don't think you're going to get any. So you are looking at these policies and saying, well, and not by you, I don't mean you. I mean, the rest of the market is also doing the same. Is looking at consistency and trying to say, well, if this doesn't really fit into the objective of, let's say, America first, and therefore it shall not be done. That's not the way in which 2016 to 2020, the Trump administration worked. I do not think that in 2020 onwards, the Trump administration also worked. There will be many different policies that will be enacted. Some of them will be offsetting each other. The impact on the economy will be offsetting each other. And we'll have to wait and see what the net result is. So you're saying that well, the dollar is going to strengthen, and so will the dollar strengthen. This is going to be bad for the budget, and it's going to be bad for growth, or at least for exports. Well, you're not saying that the deregulation isn't going to offset all of that, or that the tax cuts will not offset that. So what I'm trying to say is that the Trump administration will have many policies that will have offsetting impact rather than policies that are consistent and will have the same impact. I think that's the best way to look at them. And as far as the set of policy direction that we can figure out, US will get negatively affected by both tariffs and immigration on growth and inflation, but will be positively affected by deregulation and tax cuts. And most likely, the impact on the rest of the world will be the adverse effects of tariffs, the adverse effects of immigration, without any offsets from either deregulation or tax cuts. That's the way I think we are looking at it. And that is a story that underlies this expansion of US exceptionalism, if one describes it that. That's the basis of the expansion or the widening of US exceptionalism under Trump 2.0.
Also, Jahangir, was interesting was, what he said, that he's declaring a national energy emergency now, part of a sweeping agenda, it seems, to increase fossil fuel production. And of course, in his, uncanny style, leaving it off with drill, baby, drill.
Yes. So again, those were things that had already been set in motion. So in the sense that if you look at the Biden administration's oil policy, after the Ukraine war, there was significant loosening of drilling requirements and on pipeline, building of pipelines, etc. So in terms of what is the delta in terms of more energy production, I think if you look at the US energy production has increased significantly since the Ukraine war. It will continue to increase. I think at the end of the day, it's a matter of price. I mean, it's a question, again, you run into this inconsistency problem. So if you're going, the oil market is structurally in excess supply right now. For it to be, if you add more supply to it, and it's not just the US who's adding more supply to it. Brazil is adding, Guyana is adding, Norway is adding, everyone who has any offshore capacity is adding oil capacity. So if you're going to keep on adding capacity, unless for some reason OPEC starts cutting, though this is simply going to put the energy market or the oil market into more excess supply. And if there is more excess supply, prices are going to drop. We have about 2025, about $73 odd for 2026. That falls to about $60. So if you're going to see price dropping, then clearly expensive drilling operations, Alaska, etc., won't happen. So I think there is a natural limit to how much oil can be produced, given what the price action will be. But look, if all of us are adding more supply, then the structural excess supply will just become worse.
Interesting times ahead. That's all one can say. But Jahangir, so glad speaking with you this morning, and thanks for taking time out.
Sure.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.